The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it Tuesdays here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Great to be with you. Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark in, Chris Schmidt. Numbers to get in today at 489-1240, 489-1240, 800-825-5865. You can dial up along the Hail Varsity Radio Network. Also find us on YouTube. Subscribe there and watch the show that way, as you're able to just throw us up on the flat screen if you like. Like and subscribe. Also the different social media platforms. And always follow the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed for show updates and info at HVarsity Radio. Find Elijah on Twitter at Herbal Essence. Connor Clark's Twitter is at C_Clark_27. Yeah, it all fits. Not on the back of a jersey, but it works for Twitter at Schmidt_radio, where you can find me. We'll get our starting five, our shout-outs coming up here. On the guest list today, we'll spend time with Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch will join us here in about 15 minutes, get his thoughts on the week that is on Nebraska athletics. Kind of a dry week. Yeah, you have Husker baseball in there. Home opener on Friday. Nebraska basketball gets after it on Sunday against Michigan. And, you have a good kind of build up. There is an interview we got to talk about with JD Pickell with On3. Had a sit down with Rhule today. We've got a couple of excerpts from that. More insight to the team that's building into your 2024 Nebraska football squad. And it's Bubblicious. More bracket and bubble updates for the field of 68. Nebraska not on any bad lines, and they shouldn't be right now at 21-9, and a chance to go 3 games, make it 4 games over 500 in conference. So that's all good. But we'll play the hypothetical game, not what if, but who do you want? So we'll get there. You can email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com. So we got to give our shout-outs. So we want to give our shout-outs as Jeff is in first. Allegedly. We'll talk to that just by a nose discrepancy here in a moment. Jeff Snitley and Brian Snitley, the two that brokered the Boulder Peace Treaty. The Snitley boys are in. NASCAR Eric checks in. Amanda's here. Amanda, good to have you. Andrew is in. A second Andrew checks in, as well as Tim. And we also have Brody. So nice to have Brody in. So we'll get to some of your comments as well. What gives? Is there a conspiracy? I was first. Now my post is gone. This is a conspiracy. That's the quote.
And there's
That's
the
one of many quotes from Shawshank, as the warden's getting ticked off at his staff and starts throwing rocks in Dufresne's cell. This is a conspiracy.
And that's the concession we'll make is, yes, the comment that was allegedly made by the man who made that comment, KG Kids for Life, did not come up for us. Clearly it's not there for him. But the concession we'll make is you do get your conspiracy comment on the live stream. So that's the concession we'll make. You're not in the starting 5. We can't prove the fact that you made it. But getting your comment up on the screen this early in the show, nice. that might be up there too.
Brennan from the Black Hills put me in, coach. You are in. Eat Beef says you're benched. We are going to have hilarity ensue because sometimes, thankfully so, the stream will make a comment or two that makes me cry with laughter. And I can't compose myself. So, guys, how we doing? You navigating through this pause? We have some great post-Big Ten awards to mention. Alexis Markowski, first team All-Big Ten for Big Ten women. You have Jazz Shelley, second team. Natalie Potts, Big Ten Freshman of the Year. That's awesome. That's awesome for Coach Williams. It's awesome for Nebraska. Guest list, sorry, sidetrack. I got off. Squirrel, right? I saw a squirrel. You have Mitch Sherman this first hour. In hour two, we'll kick off hour two with Michael Brunz from 24/7 Sports. Bruntz will join us, and then a sit-down with Matt Vrzal. Ver's going to talk some Big Red football with us, and we'll dive into that learning how to win topic. And guys, it's different for different teams, but for Nebraska basketball, men and women, for Nebraska baseball, and even Nebraska softball, and you can pick sports that are part of the university system. There have been winning seasons for many of the team sports at Nebraska, and you've got even with the COVID year, you've got guys that haven't been to a bowl. You've had an entire class that hasn't been to a bowl. Not to belabor or pour salt in Husker fans' wounds. That's not our intent at all, but that's a real thing, don't you think? And Matt Rhule mentioned it today on his podcast appearance with On3, and that's the reality here of Nebraska's mentality, and it's not anything he's brought with him. Last year was last year, but the topic of being a victim of the past. And I want to go there to start first, and we'll get to basketball. We'll get to some of the cuts on Raiola and Tony White. But I think that's very real. And as much as you don't want to deal with it or watch it as a Nebraska fan, you certainly don't want to experience it as a Nebraska player, that here we go again, feeling. And Nebraska right now needs to expect to be in tight games every Big Ten football contest. That's just the way of life. I mean, it mirrors the NFL. What happens? You catch the last 5 minutes of the noon kickoff or the 3:30 kickoff, or you stay up late to watch the NBC Sunday night broadcast. Things coming down to a field goal. It's beautiful. May have been a sloppy ball game. It might be 9-6, whatever. There's drama built in, and that's why they pull the numbers they pull, because there's always some sort of miraculous or photo finish. Well, Nebraska football has been on the wrong end of it for way too long, and that's not a Rhule problem, but it's a Rhule fix he's trying to deal with.
Well, the interesting part of the conversation when you discuss learning how to win, does this team know how to win, is it's not one thing. With learning how to win, it's not just mentality, it's not just talent, it's a healthy mix of the two. In order to learn how to win, you first have to have the talent to be able to go out there and win. Once you have that talent, then you're able to develop the mentality that it takes to go be a school that goes out there and takes care of business against the teams you're supposed to go out there and beat. We've kind of seen that with Husker basketball this year, where you've seen the talent get there. Mm-hmm. The talent that Nebraska has is now finally good enough to go out and win basketball games, to get you to an NCAA tournament. And you've seen them battling with learning how to win, particularly in road games this year, where I think they kind of have it figured out at home, that grittiness, that effort that it takes to go out there and win. They're still a work in progress when it comes down there, and you've seen them get better in that regard as the year has gone on, learning how to win on the road. But that's what's kind of interesting about this conversation. It's not just one thing. It's not just this or that. You can fix one part of the mentality and still not fix the whole issue of not knowing how to win. And that's what makes this conversation so difficult, and that's what makes it so hard to analyze. Like, you look at spring football. Will this team know how to win football games in the spring? They might be better in that regard, but you're not really going to know until it becomes nut-cutting time and it's the middle of September and you're looking ahead to the start of Big Ten play. Do they know how to win then? You don't really know until you actually get on the field and get tested in that regard.
Well, you got to get tested, and you'll see a little bit of a test, presumably, with Colorado. To your Nebraska basketball point, you need the talent, fellas. You need the mentality, but you also need the buy-in. Eventually, the buy-in happened with Nebraska basketball doing the little things. That's boxing out. That's defending, and kind of that's defending even when shots weren't falling. And that was kind of a player option at some points in this season, and unfortunately, it's been a player option for a lot of Fred's teams, but they've shifted that. It's not anything he stands for, but finally they're starting to get it.
Well, it's about the buy-in, and I think a part of that is you need buy-in, you need the mentality, you need to learn how to win, you need the coaching. on top of that. I'm not saying that Nebraska doesn't have
you
the
said
coaching
lots
right
of ingredients
now.
here.
Yeah.
Yes. They haven't had the coaching in previous years in order to do that, in my opinion. I think they do now, and now obviously 5-7 last year, you could, point to a lot of things like, okay, well, this didn't go well. The offense couldn't score. This. But at the same time, in order to get that buy-in, you need to have good coaching. And then once you get that good buy-in, people will start to develop that talent that you have. And also, I think another thing, and I know that Rhule doesn't like to go along this route, but Fred does, as we're comparing the two programs right now, is you need to get guys who have won. And that's something that Fred has done tremendously well in the portal. I know Rhule likes to go more the high school route, but that doesn't mean you still can't get guys that know how to win and have won. It may not be at the same level, but at least they're winning at some way, shape, or form at some level. And that goes a long, long way because there's always the mental hurdle of what Schmidt said earlier, oh boy, here we go again. 3 losses by a walk-off field goal, 13-10. You go back to 2021, so many blown games, so many close losses. And once you finally get over that hump, it becomes a lot easier mentally to be like, okay, we're fine. And then that positively impacts your physical play. Because if you go out there nervous, you're not going to play your best football. You're going to play hesitantly, you're not going to play physical, and you're not going to play smart. When you're confident, you know you're out there for a reason, you know what your job is to do, and you know how to go out there and execute it. So I think that's also a massive part of what winning is and learning how to do that.
Well, to your point, Connor, compare the confidence level of the Husker football team last year in the month of October to the month of November. I don't even think I need to elaborate on that point. You could see a difference in how that team was playing. And yeah, the level of competition increased, but you lost a couple of starters. You had some guys step in that didn't have that momentum building early part of the season to get their feet wet and to understand what Big Ten football is. Confidence is a huge factor. And you look at Matt Rhule's rebuild as a whole at Nebraska and you go, where do you start? I mean, how do you take care of confidence while you don't have the pieces yet to go out there and win? You don't have the talent level to go out there and win. How do you start flipping the mentality before you have the confidence? And you get the confidence through wins. Like you have this conversation. You think of the totality of what Matt Rhule has to accomplish in a short period of time. And me not being a football coach, it boggles my mind a little bit. Where do you even start? How do you keep that process going? Where do you go do in a winter conditioning period, seeing what you saw in year one? It's an ever-evolving process, and it's a fluid process of teaching a group of guys how to go win football games.
I think a big message too, coaching staff-wise, needs to be, and I've heard coaches say this, whether that's collegiately, professionally, whatever, but you as a player, when you envision yourself going out and playing in said situation, you don't think about yourself being nervous. You think about yourself playing with confidence, playing well, and dominating. And I know it's easier said than done to have that mentality from thinking about it to actually being in that moment. But that's the type of message that needs to be displayed, whether you have the pieces or not, in my opinion. Because even if you instill that mental toughness and mental confidence into a team that's maybe not as talented as the one across the sidelines from you, that could still give you a little bit of a mental edge and make you play better.
Nebraska, as we kind of cross-reference teams' performances and results, Nebraska has been out-talented a lot on the basketball court, but they've found ways. And it's not always going to go your way, but you can't let it domino PTSD you. If it goes, so you're not going to win every close game, but you need to win 80% of them. That's what goes from good to great. And with Rhule right now, the mat drills that are going on, super important because you get beat or you don't compete or whatever the case may be. Guess what? Do it again. The dreaded words from a coach, whether on the practice field.
Up, downs.
Yeah, I mean, do it again. I mean, you get
on the line.
Do it till you get it right. Anonymous checks in. 8 years ago, a coworker was telling me about how good his grandson was, and they were hoping he could play D2 college hoops someday. He finally plays in the state tournament this year. His name's Carter Nelson.
Did you guys see the video the other day of Carter Nelson like absolutely dunking it over two dudes? He captioned it at Matt Rhule. I get a spot in the dunk contest next year or something along those lines.
Yeah, that was because there was a dunk that got posted on Twitter, and then what'd you think, right? He asked Coach Rhule, what'd you think? And, you hold up a 10, you hold up a 9-5, do you get the Chicago home court advantage where, Jordan robbed Dominique in the 88 slam dunk contest?
I mean,
my generation goes to Aaron Gordon getting robbed in the dunk contest.
Okay.
that is a fair assessment.
And that's fair.
I love Zach LaVine, but that is
Jordan,
a fair assessment.
Dominique, LaVine, Gordon.
I think this is so off topic, but I think the Aaron Gordon dunk where he literally goes underneath him over the mascot might be one of the greatest dunks of all time.
And how about the Nuggets getting a steal to get the best dunker of our generation next to Nikola Jokic? This is a random aside now to end this first segment of the show.
I'm going to go play in traffic.
You're missing out by not watching Jokic. That's all I'm saying.
No, I think he's awesome, and I'll catch the highlights. Oh. And then once the finals happens, I'll check it out.
Oh, you said that last year, too. I don't think you watched any finals games.
No, we had baseball to
deal with. Okay.
We had baseball to deal with. Tim checks in. Learning to win leads to expecting to win.
But that's kind of the problem.
Amen, Tim.
That's the point of the argument I was making earlier is you can also say it the other way around. Expecting to win leads to learning how to win because if you expect to win, and it's kind of chicken or the egg in that way.
It is, but it comes down to a mentality. Am I going to screw up or am I going to go make a play? We'll hear from Matt Rhule in his sit-down with On 3. Thoughts on Raiola, thoughts on Tony White. A little bit more insight. Hail Varsity with you on a Tuesday, powered by Cornhead Lager.
It's that time.
Psst. Hey, Mitch. Mitchie. We're looking for you, pal.
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, talking Big Red.
Unleash the fury, Mitch.
Unleash the fury!
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Mitch Sherman with The Athletic, here to unleash the fury at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, how's your Tuesday? Thanks for the time.
My Tuesday is going well. How are you guys doing?
We're good, man. We're just kind of sifting through a quieter week. I mean, it's not super quiet with state tournament action and Husker baseball, but Monday and Tuesday have been a little bit quiet.
Yeah, it's a quiet Tuesday followed by a whirlwind Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah, it'll be fine. But no, we're good. We're good. I wanted to dive in. We were talking, how some of Nebraska's teams have fared recently, and it kind of goes back to another pod that Matt Rhule did, and he talked about being a victim of the past, that mentality that still exists on the Nebraska football team. They're working to move past it. That happens with results. And, each year's a new year. 2024 is blank slate compared to 2023 and then obviously previous years. And that whole learning how to win process. And wanted to get your thoughts here on the the prospect of Nebraska moving forward and being able to finish in some of these presumed tight games because it is the Big Ten, a lot like the NFL. There's going to be 3-point ball games, and it comes down to situational ball.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch Matt Rhule's, at least front-facing, like what he said publicly about this subject and how that's evolved from the night of his first game at Nebraska against Minnesota last August, and you were there, Schmidt. I know I was there, and we heard him come out after the game and say that he didn't that everything that happened, because it was the same old thing. It was like, here we are in week one, and Nebraska media is asking the kind of questions about how do you let this happen again? And I think Rhule's very much in touch with the more so than most coaches with the mindset, like the feelings of the fan base. And I think even just 20 minutes after the game, he knew where the conversation was going, and he really quickly just said, "Hey, this is my first game. This is this team's first game. We're not impacted by what happened before. And I know that there have been close losses. I'm paraphrasing him, but that's not us. This is different. We're starting fresh." And then as the season progressed, you heard him approach that a lot differently. And I think he pretty quickly, because of some conversations that he had with players and just getting more comfortable in his role as the leader of this program, he understood that yeah, it is new for these coaches, but there are players in this program, and there's an entire legion of Nebraska fans for whom this is not new. And I think he really, whether he recognized it and understood it at the beginning and just didn't want to admit it, didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to make it worse like a self-fulfilling prophecy, or he actually came to more of a realization as the season went on, that's up for debate. Only he knows that. But he definitely, as the last 9 months, 8 months have progressed, has gotten more, I think, in touch with understanding how to grapple with that and how to fix that for Nebraska players. We'll see if he's got the answers, but I think the first thing is just addressing it head on, and that even though it wasn't the 10th time it had happened to Matt Rhule at Nebraska, it was for a lot of guys in that locker room, and that matters too. So for me, the first thing in learning how to win and in avoiding close losses is just laying it all out there on the table and being honest with yourself that this is not something new at a place like Nebraska.
Mitch, how do you balance what happened in October of last year with what happened in November of last year as it relates to what Matt Rhule has to accomplish in this regard, the learning how to win aspect of things over the next 6 months?
Well, I think it's all just like it's all one big, moving train. It matters. Like what happened before Matt Rhule got to Nebraska to a lesser degree than during his time here matters to the players who were in the program. I mean, even some of the things that happened to Nebraska as a football program before any of the guys were in the program matters, because it's like Nebraska football is this big living, breathing organism, and to think that the players are not impacted by the sentiments of the fans is like naive to the whole situation. They're all just kind of in it together, and there's positives and there's negatives to that. And one of the negatives is that like the players can feel pressure from things that they had nothing to do with, and it's the same thing with the coaches. So October of 23 matters for November of 23, and like those things matter for the spring practice and for Nebraska moving into the 2024 season. Yeah, I mean, you do have to find a balance because, as he said, it's a fresh slate, and you want to approach it with your team every day at practice like it is a fresh slate, and that this is new and this team is different than the last team. But I think the reality is that there is some form of carryover with all of the stuff, good and bad, that happens to Nebraska and in every program. And if Nebraska can get to a place like it was, I don't even want to say like it was when it won championships, but if it can just get to a place like it was when it was consistently winning football games, like winning 9 or 10 games a year, then they're going to benefit from the negative. I'm sorry, they're going to benefit from the positive carryover in much the same way that you see them like victimized to some degree by the negative today.
Mitch, back in the first segment, we were kind of comparing Nebraska football and Nebraska basketball with, kind of the turnaround and learning how to win and all this other good stuff. Fred uses a lot of the portal to get guys who already know how to win at the collegiate level. I know Matt Rhule likes to go more the high school route. So how can he go about turning guys who are winners in high school into winners in the Big Ten along with those portal guys?
Yeah, I'm glad I'm sitting on my couch for this conversation because I feel like this is like a lot of deep sports psychology.
Are you laying down?
Yeah, I'm laying down. I got a hot towel over my head. No,
talk it out, Mitch.
Right, talk it out. Exactly.
Today, Mitch unleashes the feelings, not the fury.
Well, I mean, I think Fred's kind of got the formula figured out, don't you? I mean, he's built this thing over the last couple of years. And, that's not to guarantee anything about the future, but the mix that he's found with basketball is different than football because the roster construction is so much different. But I think the way that he's approached it in seeking players out of high schools and supplementing what you need with your immediate holes via the transfer portal, that's a healthy way to do it in basketball. And there is some of that to football too, but I think the ratio of high school versus portal skews more toward the portal in basketball, just because of the nature of the sport and the way the rosters are constructed, and the fact that players don't stick around, high-level players don't stick around as long in basketball as they do. They have to in football for, of course, 3 years. So I like what he's doing, and I think it's important for Nebraska basketball. No matter what the short-term prognosis is, no matter who Nebraska loses. I mean, there's a big group of players who have a year left and a decision to make. And that's Juwan Gary and Bryce Williams and Rink Mast, C.J. Wilcher. But no matter what route they go, and if Nebraska's stocked with veteran players next year, or it's looking to refill in that area, and I think it's important to continue to do it the way that he has been doing it, and to prioritize high school players and development through your program. And right now they're in a situation where there's guys right in their own backyard, and that's where you have to start. And where Nebraska basketball has struggled to succeed in most of its history is to keep good players at home. And they've got a player from Lincoln committed. They had a player from Omaha down at the game on Sunday who's a big time prospect, Amari Bynum out of Omaha Bryan. It's a huge priority to get those kind of guys like Frager from Lincoln Southwest, and then supplement that with talent out of the portal like he did so well in building this 23-24 team.
And Mitch, one of the things with Husker basketball is you get back to their process of learning how to win. You look at the schedule this year. I mean, they didn't have to play a tournament team up until December whenever Creighton comes to Lincoln. You're really able to build some momentum through the early part of that season as the guys in this team gelled and learned how to win. Do you think the Husker football team has a schedule next year that could allow for the same thing, with the first top 25 team not being on your schedule till likely late November, I should say late October with Ohio State?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a similar setup. They're different animals. They're different sports. If you lose a game or two in basketball early in the season, it's not the same kind of, you don't take the same kind of hit as you do in football, obviously, but I definitely think there's something to it to suggest that Nebraska basketball built confidence through to get to the place where it's at now, and to go on the kind of run that it did when the calendar turned to 2024 because of some of the success that it had early in the year. I mean, there's a lot of turnover on rosters every year in basketball, and sometimes you don't exactly know what you're dealing with until you get out there and play some games. And if you have some moments where you fall on your face and that happens too much, then I think that can have a long-lasting impact. Now, I mean, some teams are probably not best suited for that, even if they have a lot of new faces. I mean, if you're Duke, you want to schedule hard in the non-conference, but that's not Nebraska right now. It's just not where they are as a basketball program, no matter what happens this month. So it's good for Nebraska basketball to build confidence and build wins, and you see what can happen if they get hot and they really. I mean, at home they just are such a confident team to the point where they can play poorly, like we've seen for portions of the last couple of games on the last two Sundays, and still come out of it with comfortable wins. So can that happen in football where they build momentum and confidence through the early part of the season and then catch fire late and play better than the sum of their parts? I mean, it's possible. I think that's going to be Matt Rhule's. That's one of his objectives, but we'll see. Sometimes it's like catching lightning in a bottle, and fortunately for Nebraska basketball, they were able to do that to some degree this season.
Mitch Sherman with us from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, we'll check in with you here down the road. Always appreciate talking some ball with you.
All right. Good to talk to you guys. Thanks a lot.
All right. There he is, Mitch Sherman, laying down on his couch. We'll hear from Coach Rhule next. It's Hail Varsity.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Want to catch the Mitch Sherman interview? Get to the Spotify, iTunes, Google Play platforms and type in Hail Varsity Radio. Also, the Hail Varsity Radio YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to that. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, as we roll through a Tuesday. Next hour, Michael Brunz, 24/7 Sports. We'll talk some Big Red with him. They've got their offensive line preview out. Get Bruntzy's thoughts on some Husker baseball. Get his takeaway with Nebraska basketball. Matt Vrzal going to join us at 5:25. Thoughts on the topic du jour, and that is the whole learning how to win. Let's hear from Matt Rhule and his On 3 sit-down today with JD Pickell. And specifically here, you had a bunch of things that were asked about today. Some of the impact guys on offense, the what goes into to coaching guys your way. Quite frankly, the whole victim of the past focal point we focused on here the first 45 minutes. But, he was asked about Dylan Raiola and Nebraska's quarterback situation. Here's Coach Rhule from earlier.
You mentioned those quarterbacks, Coach. What's it going to take to ultimately win that job? Is it going to be something that gets decided in the spring in a perfect world, or would that be something that goes in the fall? What's it going to take to be the quarterback in Nebraska?
Yeah, I think when we know, we know. You know what I mean? I think it's one of those deals like, I don't want to play games with people. Like, if we know, we know. And at the same time, we've also figured out, I've watched enough, major college football, and we figured out here, it's going to take a couple guys. You know what I mean? Most years you're not going to play just one quarterback. And so our job is to push all of those guys to be great. Our job is to give them all opportunities to show what they can do and to grow. And then when the time comes, we played 3 quarterbacks last year. You go back to our last year at Baylor, we sat there with Charlie Brewer all year long, and all of a sudden he's hurt, and we're in the, Big 12 championship game, and we've got our third string quarterback who's played one snap the entire year out there trying to bring us back, which he did. And so we're going to coach everybody. But in terms of naming a starter, when we know, when it's clear, we'll do it.
Good answer. We'll know when we know. And I think it's a healthy outlook, guys. Everyone thinks that Dylan's the guy, and based on the pedigree, sure, he should be the guy. That's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee he's going to be ready. Now, you have a quarterback coach, and you've got familiarity on that side of the ball here between your OC, your quarterback coach, and your head coach. So it's weird if things don't go in Dylan's favor with his skill set and talent to come in, but that's still not a given. You don't have true freshmen all the time come in very often, quite frankly, and just rip the reins away. And I'm anxious to see how it plays out. I am confident in this. Write it down, March 5th, 2024, Nebraska will get much more steady quarterback play.
Connor, either get the kerosene ready or the tweet ready for 3 months from now. Either to
he's writing it. He's writing it down.
We'll get much more consistent.
Yes,
consistency. Yeah.
Consistent. Consistent can be good.
Quarterback play
can be competent, and you're going to have better help on offense. So it's not just, hey, Heinrich, run the ball, dude.
Well, it's funny because you hear what Matt Rhule said about when we know, we'll know what their starting quarterback looks like. Is that just every single 2-minute drill at practice didn't end in an interception? Like what does that look like in your own mind?
What it looks like is it's going to pop, where you're able to audible, you're able to complete some passes that stress or stretch a defense, and then you're presumably going to be able to lean on your run game and manage.
I'm just saying that.
Part of my chicken scratch, by the way. But there you go. On stream, we have it written down.
Yeah, it's there. It's there. And considering
and
how
that's not a limb I'm going to break my neck on, because the quarterback play was just problematic at times with some tough turnovers.
Well, and considering how often trash gets handled in that studio right there, Connor, it'll be in there for months.
Yeah, it will be.
That's going nowhere. But I'm just saying
that squirt can is from 1976.
We actually have a sticker in there from 1981.
I know you do.
I think if we pull it up on stream, we'd get copyrighted. I'm not familiar with my copyright law, but I think it was a violation.
It is pretty sick, though.
That being said, the bar is low. the bar is low for like knowing what your starting quarterback looks like based on what you saw last year. Like, I do subscribe to the notion. I've kind of made fun of you, Schmidt, for saying this on the air because it's not something you want to put out there. But like, what other direction can the quarterback play go but up? With another year of development for a guy like Hoiberg, with 2 freshmen coming in that if they aren't in line to be competing for the starting job, like, they're at least going to be pushing Hoiberg, and I subscribe to the notion that Rhule, as it stands right now, is your starting quarterback unless something drastic changes that forces you to reconsider that. Like, I firmly believe that the quarterback play has one direction to go but up. So whenever Rhule says we know, we'll know, I think that's his kind of coach speak way of saying, like, we're not going to put too much pressure on a guy and say he has to do this and he has to do this and he has to do this. He has to be better. He has to be better in some key areas. And I think that's Matt Rhule's way of kind of getting out of that answer, because saying when you know you'll know is like, okay, like, it's just not as bad as last season.
No, they're completely comfortable with the guy. Okay, you earned it. You took care of the turnover bug, at least in practice, and you won the job. Way to go, son. Now go make some plays, manage the game. Don't turn the football over. And to Hoiberg's defense and credit, like, the guy is a work in progress. He's an explosive, talented athlete, and he did everything in his power to go help win football games. And sometimes he would try and do too much. But for the most part, the guy just tried to go sell out for his teammates. So I appreciate that, and I'm anxious to see a guy get development time. And the thing is okay, how much time do you have to develop 3 guys during a spring session? They need to get work, they'll get work. But how long does that window stay open for your 3 before you pare it down to 2? And still, as Coach Rhule touched on, you're going to need 3 quarterbacks. Let's sneak in Tony White, can we? Do we have time?
It's a minute and a half.
So no.
Aye.
Good thing we have one more segment in this hour, Schmidt.
Hey.
I know.
Always there to save us.
I know.
But no one, we yap. We tend to be yappers.
We do.
We're on the radio.
And stream. And, listen, you're not wrong. Quarterback play's got to go up. But, listen, I'm thinking that's going to happen with the devoted quarterback coach and the talent that is there, and then the grooming that can happen. They're going to get work. They're going to get better. And if they can't get better, then you're not using that option as an option. Fair enough.
And I think based on what we saw last year, we know that none of those quarterbacks on the roster last year, when you know factor, none of them reached that point. Can any quarterback reach that point this year? Someone's got to be the starter, whether or not they have that when you know type.
I think you're in a better spot because of what you're starting with Rhule. I mean, there are worse freshmen to deal with, right? We'll wind down Hour 1 at Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, 10 minutes away, Michael Brunz, 24/7 Sports. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Reminder to get buckled up, use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click, a message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. More from Rhule's sit down with On 3 and their national host, JD Pickell. This is on Tony White and being able to get him back for a second season. He goes into quite a bit of detail here on just what makes Tony super impressive and just what the Big Ten's going to be adjusting to and vice versa. I mean, they'll be ready for him for a second season.
No, without question. I'm sure a lot of people will have their eyes peeled on all the Husker Online practice reports and things like that. But, Coach, the defense was awesome last year. And I know Tony White, you spoke about him pretty publicly saying, like, hey, if you have the right head coaching job, go ahead and take it. How massive was it to keep him at Nebraska as the DC, and what went into those conversations to ultimately have him stay in Lincoln?
Yeah, I think the big thing was, we were able to, do some things to help Tony's situation, but we didn't do those to get him to stay. We did those after he decided he wanted to stay. And that's really a big thing. I think Tony had never worked with us before, but he believes in what we're doing. He believes in the way that we're doing it. And he's a great fit for us. He's a great coach, has a great scheme. And I look forward to seeing kind of, year 2 of it continuing to evolve, going back and looking at the games that got away from us, going back and looking at the areas that got away from us, trying to figure out how, when you play as much man as we do, can we still create more turnovers? There's so much more room for improvement. And so also understanding that in year 2 in the Big Ten, people are going to be practicing against that. Like last year I was here, not on your show, but I was having to defend the 3-3-5 all the time. Now it's like, hey, I bet you're going to see some other people start to copycat it in this league. And so I was excited to have him back, even if it's just for one more year. And I hope it's 10 years. We have some great young coaches on defense. I wanted them to have one more year seeing how he does it. And then I think Nebraska's defense will be off and running for a long time.
So some insight there. Listen, we got him. I'm reading into it. We got him for one more year.
Oh, yeah.
We're renting, Tony. And thanks for sticking around. And they're evolving. They're tweaking. And when you have a guy like the Polar Bear at, 300, 310 is what they'll probably want him to play at.
Peak male physique.
Right. Quick, athletic, agile. And then Ty Robinson, some of those young guys that contributed. Hey, defense is going to be a lot of fun again next season. They got to shore up the middle part, that second level, with some of the departures. But no, good insight there on Coach White. And I love what he said about, well, yeah, we got to take care of Tony, but we wanted to make sure he wanted to be here. And he did. And then the money followed. What's the motive? What's the reasoning? And it just was right to stay here a second year because, man, guys dream to have that crack, that shot at being a head coach. But it's got to be the right thing. It's got to be measured. So, and it was. And Nebraska gets him for a second year. That's not new news, but a little bit further insight from Matt Rhule today. We'll dive into some Husker basketball thoughts and football observations here. O-line is profiled by 24/7. We'll get that link sent, Bruntz, if you're listening, as he just texts. Michael Brunz, 24/7 Sports on the way. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, Hour 2, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. We welcome him back. It is Michael Brunz time, 24/7 Sports, at Michael Brunz on Twitter. And Dion is right. We have a great guest on. We have both been counting the days, Mr. Brunz. This has happened. What do we have, like 6-7 years? You and Glissman and Schaefer. I mean, 2024 is off to a roaring start. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too. Good to be back. I had a little paper chain. I made a paper chain, and every day that it got closer to being on, I ripped off another one. So the paper chain is complete, and we're back together. It's good to see you guys.
Your Oakland A's room in the Bruntz household has, I thought it had chalk marks on the wall like, Andy Dufresne.
Yeah, basically. Well, they got stadium drawings today. I don't know if you saw those. They're going to be playing in like a Kenny Rogers Roasters light is what they got going on. So we'll see how that works. But
have you jumped off the A's bandwagon yet? I know I saw you with the Baltimore lid, and it was a throwback Cal Ripken lid. I mean, I love you, and I was the bandwagon of all bandwagoners in the late 80s with Canseco and McGuire and Cardi Lansford and Terry Steinbeck and Dave Stewart. Loved that squad. Once they all left, I didn't wear Oakland gear anymore. You've loved them forever.
Yeah, I'm still on the bandwagon.
You're driving it.
I haven't figured out how yet, as a fan of a team, to hate your ownership but like the team still. So I'm basically in sports fan therapy. If anybody's got any good advice for me,
it's been a therapeutic Tuesday.
Drive 7.5 hours, go to Coors Field. The Rockies fans have it figured out. You can go to a baseball. You don't even have to like the team. You can still go to a baseball game and enjoy the baseball. That's kind of the key.
Yeah, Elijah hates Chris Bryant.
But damn, do I still kind of call myself a Rockies fan.
Yeah. We talked about learning how to win, Bruntsy, in the first hour, and Brian checks it on the stream, and we were talking quarterback play. If quarterback play gets better, this year for Nebraska, hard liquor sales will exponentially increase out of celebration versus them continuing to increase with the other reason, or defenses scheming well.
If I know anything about people in Nebraska, they'll find a way to drink the hard liquor no matter what after a Husker
Win or
game.
lose, we still booze. Yeah, I like it. Well, we'll get into some football thoughts, but Bruntz, want to get your take on Nebraska basketball and the ride they have been on, and what some of the projections are. We were batting around. We're assuming that things are going to be okay Sunday, with Selection Sunday, and things will be okay in Michigan for Nebraska basketball. Big of us to assume with Nebraska basketball. All that being said, would Nebraska, if you could pick, you want that first round win. Do you want a 1 seed or a 2 seed? I.e., do you want to be an 8 or a 9, or do you want to be a 10 when you look at the projected seedings right now?
I think I would probably rather be a 10.
Yes.
I don't. Just kind of looking at some of the 8-9 matchups, and then also kind of what's been kicked around and who's on that 7-10 line. It's a lot of Mountain West schools. I think it's teams that Nebraska, if they were in a 7-10, I saw one of them was Boise State today. I've seen Colorado State bandied about, although they've kind of struggled down the stretch. I mean, I think those are teams that Nebraska could kind of bother with their length. I think they could bother with rolling a veteran team out there. And I think if it were me and you had your pick, I'd probably want to go in as a 10 and try your luck against whoever you get in the second round. That's not what I saw today was UConn. They would potentially get UConn in Brooklyn in round 2.
That's after a first round showdown with Texas. Just more salt in the wound potentially for Texas.
Yeah, I saw another Texas Tech, Mississippi State. They've been linked with before. So give me the 10 seed against the Mountain West team that comes out of the pile.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. It's funny because in my life, I've wanted to be a 10 my whole life as well. Instead, I'm stuck being a 6.5. And it's kind of matched in the Husker basketball world, too, where, you know what, you look at it and you go, being a 10 sounds pretty nice. I mean, I even look at the 7 seeds, and I go, the 7 seeds somewhat look like a better draw than some of these 8 seeds. It's not just
St. Mary's.
Round. Look at St. Mary's. You look at, I think Boise State might be back down to an 8 now, but Utah State, they're a good basketball team, but they haven't made it through the rigors of a Big Ten schedule like Nebraska has. Some of those 7 seeds look a little bit more advantageous than the 8 seeds. It's not just the round of 32; it's the round of 64 as well.
Yeah, and as a 10, it's still the door I think is cracked, but just ever so slightly that you would potentially end up in Omaha as a 10. But I don't know if that happens. I know they've said that they would be open to doing that. And I mean, one of the kind of popular matchups the last couple of weeks has been Nebraska and BYU in the 7-10 in Salt Lake City, which I don't think anybody would want any part of that. But
only if it's on Sunday.
Yeah, that's another one that's out there too. So I'm with you guys. I think I would probably rather go in as a 10 and see what you can do there, because I think Nebraska's got a team where if they get the matchups right, this is a team that can win a couple games. I mean, I really believe that. So. I think you obviously give yourself a much better chance of doing that, I think, by going in as a 10 seed.
A topic we kicked around on the show yesterday was how high of a seed could Nebraska get with a run in the Big Ten tournament? What's your take on that? Schmidt said a 7. I think if you
6, 7.
You said 6. Yeah, I think if you go and depending on who you beat, if you beat Illinois and Purdue in a Big Ten title run and go win the title, you're a 25-win Big Ten champion, which that's a long way off. There's a lot of ifs in there, but I think you could get up to maybe a 5 seed, with especially Wisconsin's fall if they drop down and you kind of swap places. What's your take on that? How high of a seed could Nebraska get if they finish the season as strongly as possible?
Yeah, I mean, it depends who you beat. You're right. I mean, you're going to get, probably 2 marquee wins if you do, go and win the whole thing. I don't know. I mean, depending on how things shake out in other conferences, I mean, I could see them flipping with Wisconsin. I mean, I haven't really dug in, to different possibilities with, what that would do, to their net and stuff like that. But I could see maybe getting up to a 5, 6-5, somewhere in there. I mean, I don't know how much upward movement there is for Nebraska right now, but because even, with losing to Ohio State as a quad 1 loss and, beating Rutgers at home, I mean, Nebraska really, they haven't moved in the last week in a lot of projections, and their team sheet looks pretty similar. So I don't know. I mean, I could see maybe a 5, depending on kind of how things shake out elsewhere.
Michael Brunz is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Let's keep the Nebraska ball hypotheticals coming, and I'll ask you one more here. Say Nebraska is on that 10 line or that 7 line. What 2 seed would you most want to see if you're Nebraska? This is according to Joe Lenardi's bracket. North Carolina, Marquette. I lost it for a second.
Iowa State.
Iowa State, thank you, and Tennessee. Which one of those teams would you most want to see?
Kansas. It wasn't listed, but give me Kansas.
That has sailed.
Yeah. I would like Nebraska's chances against a Marquette. I think I'd like that. In that hypothetical, weren't they getting like South Dakota State or somebody in the 15? Like that was what they would have to go through to get to Nebraska?
Sam Houston.
Oh, Sam Houston? Okay. Give me Marquette. I mean, I think Tennessee would give Nebraska some issues with the type of matchup that would really scare me is a team with athletic length, and that's what they've kind of struggled with at times this year. So I don't know. I mean, I would need to dig in a little bit more to those 4, but Marquette feels like the one that Nebraska would probably be able to handle the best out of those 4.
Yeah, your 1 seeds: Houston, Purdue, Tennessee, or Arizona. They're kind of flip-flopping. UConn, Tennessee / Arizona, Iowa State. How about the Hoiberg Bowl? I mean, that'd be all sorts of tasty in Omaha to boot, wouldn't it?
There'd be a lot of people in Ames, with having to do some soul searching. I mean, who they'd root for, but it's kind of like it would almost be like rooting against your kid. And
if you're Dion, you can have your favorites. You can pick who you like, and and no matter what happens, if Nebraska were to hypothetically play Iowa State and win, or say Iowa State would down Nebraska, most of Ames will be like, well, Johnny would have won. Johnny Orr, of course. Johnny would have had it handled. Michael Brunz with us, 24/7 Sports, Hail Varsity Radio, at Michael Brunz on Twitter. And Brunzy, what did you think was possible this season with Nebraska basketball? So let's kind of rewind here, since it's been 6.5 years. What did you think was possible as this season started? I mean, it's really come together for this squad.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably on the high side of expectations, we're like maybe kind of being in the bubble conversation in February. Like that's kind of what I think that's what I did say back in October and November, was like, this is a team that will probably hang around in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten. And, at least be in the conversation, maybe fade a little bit. I mean, I think the one thing that I wasn't expecting as much this year, that, the Big Ten, you've got Purdue, Wisconsin's okay, pretty good. Illinois is decent. It just feels like there's kind of this jumble of teams in the Big Ten that are all just kind of right in the middle. Mm-hmm. And, I guess I didn't really foresee that coming into the season. And I don't know. I mean, I think in order to, get in that NCAA tournament conversation, you would have had to have had a lot of things break your way. If you would have told me back in October that Nebraska would have a chance to go on the road to to secure a double bye in the Big Ten tournament, I would have told you you're crazy. And, Nebraska has, for better or worse, has been in the NCAA tournament conversation since basically the calendar flipped in January. So, we were talking about on our podcast today. When it gets to the end of the season, is there anybody that's a more likely Big Ten Coach of the Year right now than Fred Hoiberg in the conference? I think if you gave it any kind of thought, you'd have to give it to him based on just kind of where everything was predicted to finish at the start of the season. Maybe Ben Johnson at Minnesota, who's really, frankly, kind of played his way out of the unemployment line with the way they've played this season. But, that's just been kind of the magic carpet ride this thing's been. They've just been consistent and a really tough out this whole season.
Michael, kind of a bigger picture question here regarding the Big Ten tournament. And I know the field isn't completely set yet, but it will be in just about a week. Who's the team that you think could be the dark horse in that field of 14?
And why is it Nebraska?
I don't think a 4
double bye.
If you get a double bye, I think you forfeit that, right? That's you have to hand it back. You have to hand back the dark horse label. I don't know. We're contractually obligated at this point to say Michigan State's one of them, right? Like it's that time of year. It's Izzo's time to get his boys ready to play. I would have maybe said Northwestern, but it seems like they're losing bodies by the minute. I don't know.
Iowa?
What's that?
Iowa?
Maybe. They're playing pretty good basketball right now. I guess Iowa's probably they're just kind of hanging around there with the way they've played the last couple weeks. If things kind of get car crashy here with the way the standings finish towards the end of the season, they've got a chance to play their way in. So they can score for sure, and they get on a heater when they get to Minneapolis. Maybe that's your dark horse. You answer the question for me.
It's a big game against Illinois, too, that they have to round out the season at home. That game's going to be in the millions, but I like that answer.
Should be fun.
It's Michael Brunz with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. And Michael, before we get you out, let's go to Husker baseball. Husker baseball apparently top 5 in the RPI following their weekend sweep of the College of Charleston. They have the home opener Friday night against South Alabama. What do you make of this team early in the season as they come back to Lincoln? And what do you make of South Alabama and the test that they present this weekend?
Yeah, Nebraska finished their first 10 games 7-3. That's the first time, or their best 10-game start since 2008. And they've done it against good competition. And, I think what you've seen through 10 games is you've seen the intent with which Will Bolt and the staff wanted to kind of retool the roster. You're seeing it kind of play its way out on the field. They've got really good pitching depth that they didn't have the last couple seasons. The lineup doesn't have the Max Anderson or Bryce Matthews in it that's going to hit 15 or 20 home runs this year. But you've seen kind of the change in approach with what Riley Silva and Caden Brumbaugh are doing at the top of the lineup. And 1 through 9, they're a really challenging lineup to face. They can beat you with speed. Even, against Charleston when, they were getting outscored early in games, they were still setting the table, just not getting the big hits. So, I think they've got a kind of a hard-nosed team. I think it's a team that, Will Bolt has been looking for the last couple seasons with a little bit of edge to it. They've already played some, I would say, emotionally charged games against Grand Canyon was probably the polite way to put it. And, I think when they get home, it's going to be a chance to kind of flex that pitching depth because you start having midweek games and you got to play 4 and 5 a week. But it's for a team in the North, and if you want to do something that, when it gets to late May, you got to take care of your business at the start of the season. And so far, they've done that. South Alabama is another team that's going to be, at the end of the season, an RPI helper, more than likely. So they've got a chance to keep that rolling. I think they're playing confident baseball right now.
Michael Brunz, 24/7. Bruntz, thanks for coming on today, bud.
Anytime, guys. Good to see you.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Let's talk to ex-Husker and pizza man at Paisans, Matt Vrzal, with us, your host for Husker Hangover. Verz, have you projected ahead to the next season of Husker hangover, more happy hangovers, and what I mean by happy, more wins to talk about. And have you got that feeling this far away from spring ball?
It would be nice if we could do that. That show's been fun. It's very therapeutic for me.
I bet.
I started that thing on radio. Mm-hmm. An old GM said, "Well, what would you do if you could have a show?" And I said, "Well," I said, "if somebody can explain to me how in a football crazed state there's no Sunday morning show after everybody's kind of calmed down." And I said some things to him to confirm my vitriol for the show that I can't say on air. Mm-hmm. But I said, "Yeah, it just doesn't make sense." He said, "Great, when do you want to start?" I said, "Okay." I said, so we did it. And then, much as it goes, I don't do super well with corporate America, so we picked up and we moved on and took it to the internet. It's become repetitive to me, though, which is unfortunate because it's through certain coaching regimes, it was always you could replay a show from the week before. Mm. And, that's frustrating because you got the same stuff to say. Your buddies that you would love to call to have on the show are like, what are we going to talk about? The same stuff? And I'm like, pretty much. We're just going to cover it again. So hopefully they break some bad habits and they get into what, it needs to be and which is winning and playing well and playing together, which they've done a great job of thus far. So I am excited to have some positive Husker hangovers upcoming. Elijah and I have been on the road for at least the last 3 years, and Elijah's got 4 years of post-game shows, and I've got several more years of post-game shows, and you're right, it's the same bad dream, man.
I mean, since I've started, I can count on one hand the number of shows I've done where the fans have been happy. 4 years.
What are they?
Probably the comeback again. Well, last year was Illinois. Year before was that escape act at Rutgers, right? Okay. And then I think
Mickey Joseph, whenever he had the comeback against Rutgers.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't a comeback. They were down. They were in trouble. And then I think probably the Indiana game, if you go back to Mickey as interim coach.
I was going to say you have the Iowa Mickey game as well.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, that was kind of we were in Iowa City doing the post game. So we had
I was changing the studio.
Pissed off people staring at us while we're doing a show across from Kinnick.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's one hand after a mowing accident you can count.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's tough.
Well, I would have asked this, and Rhule did On 3 interview today, did a pod hit, and he was talking about a ton of things, giveaways and takeaways. Those are always key with how your football team performs, right? Are you plus or are you minus? But he touched on the mindset of getting past the victim of the past. While he wasn't here for a lot of previous close losses, their mantra is chasing 3 this year. A lot of guys on the team, Verz, were, they've seen nothing but almosts, right? Where they've been right there for so many ball games in their tenure, and it's just not shaken right. I can't imagine finally getting that monkey off your back and winning the tight ball game and then plowing forward, but that's what he's trying to do mentality-wise. That's what the team's got to get better at.
It's I've lived this, not on the scale that they are, but they're also they're accustomed to this. They've done this. My first coaching job was in Malcolm, Nebraska. Okay, Ryan Terwilliger, for some reason, unbeknownst to whomever. No, it's Jack Tarr. But Jack Tarr, who's a great guy, he hired Ryan Terwilliger as the head football coach at Malcolm High School. Ryan Terwilliger then, in turn, hired his brother Troy, who is one of the greatest offensive minds that you have never heard about. It was unbelievable. And then Ryan hired me as a defensive line coach, and then Doug Mahoney was also on our staff. And if I forgot anybody, I apologize. But Malcolm had 10 wins in 10 seasons, and one of those seasons was a 7-win, 8-man season. So they were back up to being, 11-man again, and it was the strangest thing to me because we had to teach them how to win. And it helped me figure out how spoiled I was in my career because I had lost 3 games in high school. I had lost 5 games in college. So losing to me was never an option. It was, we're going to put in work, we're going to go on the field, we're going to win. And if we lose, it's an anomaly. It's not if we win, it's an anomaly. So we had to go through it, and you're learning this, that these kids didn't believe that they won. They thought they honestly thought they showed up to lose. And it was crazy. I mean, it scrambled my brain. I'll never forget, we get done with the first year. We're 4-4. We missed the playoffs by 0.01 power point, whatever. Don't care. Because we would have got rolled round 1. We just weren't ready for it. But I walked over to Jack, and I was like, hey, I'm sorry. We suck. I was like, I lost 3 games my whole high school career. I'm like, we're terrible coaches. And he turned, he looked at me, he smiled, he said, look at the parents. Look at the kids. I mean, we're 4-4. To me, it's a failure. To them, it's a party. They were having an absolute day. I mean, we were celebrating and having fun, and that was when I learned that I was a spoiled athlete. Like, I was spoiled that I had great coaching. I had high expectations that we were going to win. I had all these things that these kids didn't have. So now I have to instill in them, hey, we can win. We will win. And then the next year, now here was the greatest of Troy. This year we're too tight, I formation. We're playing power football because we didn't have it. The next year, all my linemen except a couple graduated. I had a couple good ones that were coming back, and we break the huddle. Our first game of the year against Weeping Water. My buddy Sippy is the head coach of Weeping Water. We break the huddle and go 5 wide. So in one offseason, we went from 2 tight, I formation to 5 wide. And Sippy looks across the field at me, and he just mouths WTF. Said,
we were planning on that one.
this is what we got. And we had a kid, Saul Kittleson, that could sling it, and we had kids, Nelly and Kuby and Austin Weaver, these little dudes that they're fast and they could catch it. Now, we got our feet put to the fire by Shelby Rising City in the 3rd round of the playoffs, but hey, we made it to the 3rd round of the playoffs. And I'm pretty sure at one point in time I was either the mayor of Malcolm or I might have owned Malcolm, but I think some guy offered me his wife. I'm not quite sure about that part, but it was a great learning lesson. So what they're going through on a much grander scale, I get it. Like I understand it. And you have to then be infectious and competitive and everything. And I guess I don't know what they're called. They're called back drills or whatever they're called. But, a couple people have gotten back to me that those are absolutely horrible, and I think that's absolutely awesome because it's competitive, and if you fail, you go again, and you gotta get in the mindset of being a winner, being a champion, and being that person. So they've got to build that. That's part of the build, just like the X's and O's, just like a 3-3-5 call on defense, just like an offensive play call. You've got to build a mindset of a winner. And so I'm excited to see how they do it. I'm actually excited to go to a spring practice again this year. So it's going to be crazy fun, and you can just see how much progress they've made, and hopefully it's all going as they planned.
It's Matt Vrzal with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Matt, first I just want to say shout out to the city of Malcolm, great little town. I hope they finish the bridge next to their baseball field so it's easy for you out there umpiring. That would be great because you had to take the long way around to get to their baseball field. I digress, though. You mentioned how excited you are, Matt, to go to a spring practice and see what kind of progress they've made. And tell me, from an outside looking in, being a guy who has seen this process play out at Malcolm, what can fans look for? What can guys like Schmidt and myself look for this spring to see if they have made progress through winter conditioning, through those mat drills, and see if they're closer on that journey towards winning?
So the easiest, everybody, and I get it, you want to watch the skill guy and you want to watch the fast guy and the guy with the ball and all that kind of stuff. And I'm on record. I've called 2 people in radio here in Omaha, and when Nash Huntmacher decided to wrestle, he now can hopefully break our drought of not having an all-conference player. Okay? Because what he did last year at the zero, I call it a zero, he's just head up on the center. What he had the zero at his weight was pretty amazing because he played a lot of snaps, a lot of snaps. So now him at a lower weight, more explosive back in the hips, which is what wrestling is. I think it's an awesome thing for linemen to do. If his pace of play picks up, right, he looks quicker, he looks faster, that's a huge thing. When the linemen start to look fast, and we all got to watch it, right? We watched Michigan's offensive line just demolish everybody. So for those that say an offense based on running the football, the majority of the time it won't win anymore. It's too different now. You're a liar and you're stupid and you don't know football. Because that form of football will play forever. It will play for eternity. Your linemen have to make the jump. Your speed guys are your speed guys. Your linemen have to make the jump because when your linemen make the jump, now you control line of scrimmage. Now safeties get anxious. Linebackers can't drop into coverage as much as they want to. So now you have to respect what's going on at the line of scrimmage, and now your fast guys look faster. And now that corner that's on an island gets juked, and your wide receivers running open. That throw becomes easier. You don't have to grease it in somewhere. There's not two safeties back waiting to intercept it when you try to throw it deep. So look at how the linemen, the offensive linemen, the defensive linemen play. If they look quick to you, if they look agile to you, if they look like they're in great shape already, now you know you're ready to make the next move. You don't have to get in battles with Rutgers, and you don't have to get in battles with Indiana. You dominate those games, and that then leads into their mindset change. So I would love somebody to get up in the spring game 14-0 and win it 28-0, because then I know they're killers, and they want to win, and they want to embarrass, and they want to destroy, and they want to dominate. They want to do those things. So that's kind of what I would be looking for.
Matt Vrzal's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. More with Verz on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Matt Vrzal's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. A few more minutes. Paisan's Pizzeria and, of course, Husker Hangover. Verz, you are right about the offensive line and just that mentality. And running the football is going to wear you down, wear you out. And it's the old 3 yards turns into 6+ right by the fourth quarter. And you mentioned the one-on-one matchups on the outside when you do throw it. Let's talk about whatever quarterback looks like for Nebraska moving forward, because just like Nash had to go against some big dudes for a lot of snaps, that's not in his favor. You flip it around. Think if you get a passing game in a second year under Rhule and company where there is some consistency with it, where you're going to be a run-first football team, but the threat of passing is very real, and you got to respect that. That part of the equation is pretty appetizing for Nebraska fans, I think.
I think that you're going to use, or they'll have to use, the passing game, as you explained there, this year, because to make a leap from getting better every week to being dominant every week is a big leap.
Sure.
So yes, you're correct. But Fedoni has to be a part of it. I mean, he has to. He creatively getting him involved in the game plan is it has to happen this year. He cannot be an afterthought. He's almost got to be the focus of easing up strain in the box. He's just too talented to not be that way. So that will be something that I'm watching for. Like, as you get into the season, that would be something that I would pay a lot of attention to. There's just things that have to happen for that. I mean, it's got to be a part of it until your lines become the focus of your team. When the lines become the focus of your team, you can do what you want. Up until that point, you've got to motion, you got to shift, you got to try to confuse the defense, not confuse yourself, and then ease that strain in the box, and then let them gain confidence, and then watch what happens when you see a bunch of big dudes get confident in what they're doing.
Verz, I want to ask you, Chasing 3 is this year's mantra. The off-season / NFL Hard Knocks type videos that are out. Nebraska fans love it. Great for recruiting. Moms and dads get a look behind the curtain on that recruiting trail. With you guys, you had unfinished business. Who coined that? Because we were talking to Uncle Charlie yesterday, and he said that the players came up with that, and I know it was born out of the Florida State game. But who put that together? You were part of that team.
I would do a copyright search if I were you, because there's one member of the weight room staff that has copyright on that.
Okay.
And he may have been the main guy of the weight room staff.
Okay, that guy. I got you.
Yep. Yep. So
well played. Well played, copyright guy.
There's always an opportunity.
Verz avoiding a lawsuit too.
That was a good move. That was a good.
Yes, it was.
You can learn a lot. You can learn a lot in college if you pay attention. You really can. It's quite a world that you're in when you're there.
So someone may have the copyright on it, but
I think somebody tried to use it within the past 5 years, and that person
got a cease and desist.
I think they sent the cease and desist, and somebody sent back the middle finger, and then it all got interesting.
Good to know.
I could be exaggerating that, but I'm pretty sure that happened.
Vrzal's helping us avoid a lawsuit here.
Well, we aren't gonna run with anything unfinished business, because clearly that's now copyrighted, and
that's what I'm saying.
It's on air.
That's what I'm saying. He's avoiding it.
Yeah.
Well, Verz, to zoom out here and to get away from copyright law
infringement,
because I didn't pay enough attention in college, and I don't know what I can and can't say. Tell us about the importance of winter conditioning being player-led. It was player-led for you this year. It kind of feels like that transitionary period where Rhule talked about it in their first episode of Chasing 3, how the guys that are experienced, the guys that know the standard, have to bring the younger guys along. What's the importance of this time of year being player-led?
The great part of this is it's where your camaraderie builds, right? Where you find your leaders, which Nebraska has been in desperate need of. You find all of these things that you need that have nothing to do with X's and O's again, but it's all about who is in it with you, who is in my foxhole, who can I depend on, because you'll find this out now, because you know as well as I do, if somebody will cheat in the drill, they will cheat in the game. Okay? If you can't touch a line that's there, if you can't finish a drill, even though you didn't do very good in the drill, you start to be somebody that your team doesn't want you around, right? So it's player-led, it's player-driven. They'll say that. It's great to think. The ones that aren't mandatory, that are player-led, are more important. There'll be strength staff there. There'll be guys directing you in the drills. It's when you go do the ones when nobody's around and no strength staff is there and no coaches just walk by. Those are the ones. Like, those are the ones where you know who the alpha of alphas is. And when it gets to nut cutting, those are the guys that are going to be the ones that either get you hyped up to make a big stop or get you calmed down to make a big play. That's when you figure it out. These are great. You're going to have some guys that are over the top rah-rah and don't really factor in or turtle when the real competitions happen. But it's the one when nobody's around. You know, those are the ones where you find who your leaders are on your team.
Verz, about a minute and we'll get you out. You are now the GM of the Chicago Bears. What are you doing with the first pick?
I ain't taking Caleb Williams. I'm getting that kid is going to I'm not on him. I think he is going to fail miserably. I don't think the support structure on him or the family aspect is good. Mm-hmm. I've never seen, and especially, I've never been in a professional locker room. I've had a lot of my buddies that have been in there, and they tell me the stories about it. Never once have they told me, oh, yeah, this kid, we used to tell him, attaboy, because he cried in his mommy's arms after he lost the college football game when he was allegedly a transcendent talent that was supposed to be the best thing that's ever happened. Like that those two don't go together. Alpha competitors do not go climb into the stands and cry in mommy's arms when they don't win. That's an AAU. That's a 7-on-7 brat. That's all that is. He does not. He'll tell you he likes football and all this stuff, and he may, but I don't want him in Chicago. I would not put what's perceived. Okay, this is all perception. Nobody knows this. What is perceived as an A quarterback around a B team.
Right.
When I could take a B quarterback in everybody's perception and build an A team around him, I would trade down and try to get 3 first-round picks. Like that's how I would handle it. But he isn't the answer. He isn't even in my notebook of things that I would option. I would get rid of that. I wouldn't even talk to that kid. I'll be honest with you.
Well, Verz, I'd love the take. Matt Vrzal with us, and can check him at Verz51 on Twitter. Verz, thanks for the extended time today, but always appreciate chatting.
You bet, boys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, you're invited to check out the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for Hail Varsity Radio. And as always, like and subscribe to Hail Varsity YouTube channel. And big thanks to all of you who checked in and chimed in. Lots of folks saying what's up. They loved us catching up with Verz. NASCAR Eric checks in. Love Verz even more with the CW take.
Little Caleb Williams take. Yeah. I think Caleb Williams is going to be a great NFL quarterback. I have to disagree with Verz on
pretty
that.
Blunt. I like that. I think he's got the talent to be a great quarterback, but if he goes to Chicago, I think he'll be kicking and screaming, and there'll be a fit or 7.
I mean, I think you can look at
Nobody's
it two ways.
Nobody's going to tolerate him.
No, not in that town.
Well, Here's the thing. If Caleb Williams goes off to the NFL and succeeds, people are going to look at him crying on the sideline and say, well, you're just a crybaby. He never had the mentality for the NFL. But if he goes and succeeds, people are going to look at that moment and say, that's how much that guy hated to lose in college, that he broke down in tears anytime he lost. That's what made him a winner.
And that's why he went 7-5.
Well, I mean,
there's no excuse for them to go 7-5 last year.
I think there is. Their defense.
Yeah.
Awful. Whenever you're putting up 40 points a game, you should expect to win.
What's the excuse behind losing to Tulane in the bowl game?
That was a team that just didn't care. They had college football playoff aspirations.
Again, they didn't get there.
Well, it's what Verz said. I think what USC had was an A quarterback with a B- team around him. And I think for the first year you saw
A offense.
You saw the holes that Caleb Williams was able to fill. I think Caleb Williams made that an A offense.
Oh, yeah,
I think
sure.
It's probably a B offense with a C- defense.
I think it's a B+ defense. With,
you're fooling yourself.
No. Talent-wise?
USC?
Speed and
Did you watch them?
I watched them. I'm saying the parts of that defense are all 4 and 3 and 5 stars. So
so were the Nebraska defenses under Mike Riley, but they were still terrible.
No, they weren't 4 and 5 and 3 stars. I mean, they were loaded with high level, high profile talent on the lines, the second level, and SC's always had corners and safeties.
Riley doesn't care about defense.
Thank you. It comes down to how Lincoln Riley wants to play patty cake during practice. That's it. They have the dudes and the talent to be pretty high level.
I mean, he came from the Big 12, for Christ's sake.
I just think
that guy does not care about defense.
If you look at that team from last year and say
Grinch, Grinch was a coordinator for Leach. All right.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll check the tape next year when Caleb Williams wins Rookie of the Year.
Are you serious?
I am 100% serious. He has arm talent and quarterback talent that I think you have to go back to Burrow for.
I think Caleb Williams is a lot like USC's defense. The skills are there. It's what's going to be done with them.
We'll go back
and
we'll check
Chicago, I think Verz hit it on the head with the talent around him as well. How's he going to tolerate that? I think he turns into super diva super soon. I'm not wishing that. I don't discount that he's super gifted, but from a mentality standpoint, is he going to be able to persevere through and take the heat?
Yeah, again, if he's not tough enough in that organization, it's not the organization, it's the fans that are just going to eat him alive. Like,
What's home base sound like? Do they want him?
It's pretty mixed, I think. I think people realize how good Caleb Williams is, and I also recognize that, and he's a generational talent. But
we throw generational around too much, but he's on that level.
It's so hard for the Bears to get rid of that first-round draft pick or that first overall pick because they want so much for it, and nobody's willing to give it to them.
Well, but yeah, they got a bargain. Defina says, imagine Butkus or Iron Mike Ditka crying after a loss.
Exactly.
No crying in Chi-Town. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 4 with Hail Varsity. Thanks for tuning in.